So we want to talk about insurance. The question, of course, is what do insurance companies do? Insurance companies are actually in a specialized kind of derivatives market where you pay them to take risk that you have. And they make their money, by and large, by charging an appropriate amount to average that risk over time across a group of people, and taking the money, since you're paying them now and the risk for payout is in the future, and investing that money and making money off of their investment. In fact, a lot of these insurance companies are basically nonprofits, or they're regulated in how much money they can make relative to their claims, or they don't look at the claims and their payout as an expense at all, but just a accuracy calculation of what they pay out. Their money is made on the float in between the two things. So there's some things that the insurance companies provide. They provide payments management. They provide research and marketing into potential insurance markets. And eventually they pay out claims. So that's the stuff that they provide. And along the way, mostly they identify risks and markets where they can make a profit and estimate their risk and figure out how to sell insurance on a specific kind of risk. In the current marketplace, we see that there's some stuff in the news about insurance companies like American Family and other insurance companies, especially auto insurance, where they're having to return money to their policyholders because nobody's driving. The reason that they're doing that is because when people don't drive, they don't have accidents, therefore there are no claims, and they're either legally required to, or they're a nonprofit and they have to return this money. Let's also talk about how they work and what kind of overhead they have. Because to understand how smart contracts basically represent an existential threat to the insurance company, you've got to take a look at what they currently do. The easiest way to look at this is in terms of health insurance. Health insurance has the best available data out there that I can average. And when you start breaking down health insurance, you'll see that 22%, roughly speaking, is paid out for prescription medicines and drugs. 20% is physician services. 19.8% is outpatient services. 15.8% is what we'd call inpatient services. This is when you're hospitalized. And most private companies, on average, they run about 17.8% overhead. That's all the money that they're spending to run their operation. And when you look at big insurance operations like Blue Cross Blue Shield, that I think they're a nonprofit, but they have to retain some against future expenses. And United Health, the profit in the health insurance is about 3%, which isn't a super high profit. A grocery store, and they have guaranteed sales of almost all their products. If it doesn't sell, they return it. They also run about 3% profit. So the profit is not huge. Where do they make all their money? Well, you pay insurance now, and then you don't need the payout until later, and they have the money in between. So that's their real money maker. Now, to give you some idea of efficiency, insurance overhead is 17.8%. Medicare's overhead, for basically being in the same marketplace, is less than 2%. So there's lots of money out there that if they aren't trying to do all these other things, like identify risks and manage systems, that they can actually be a lot more efficient and save a lot of money. And if you look at the cost of private health insurance and you figure out that 17%, that's $145 billion a year that is being spent by insurance companies that could be replaced if you could just take care of some of these things, like managing payments, identifying risks and markets, and providing some sort of capital and identifying payout. Now, health insurance has a pretty complicated payout model, but there's lots of insurance that identifying who gets paid out is completely automated. For instance, flight insurance, if the plane doesn't take off and you purchase flight insurance, travel insurance, then you get a payout immediately. There's no human beings involved. The airlines report this to the insurance companies pay it out to you. So there is a group of payments for claims that's pretty well automated. Let's also look at the same sort of thing for life insurance. Life insurance has a 61% payout. Almost all life insurance is nonprofit. They spend 11% on product development. That's identifying groups of people that they can go and insure. They spend 9% on operations. Operations and IT, which is 20%, basically represent the sale of the insurance, the collecting of bills, the sending out of mailings, the getting payments, clearing those payments, collecting the payments. So I've actually got the sales part broken out there. That's 8%. Okay, and most of them are basically zero profit, as in they can predict for a first particular set of people on average that this is the likelihood that they're going to die. And when they have those numbers figured out, then they know what to charge over the term of the life insurance. So in the term life insurance, you've got $155 billion a year that is spent on it, and it's a $48 billion opportunity to deal with some of these expenses. So that's how it works. And there are 3 different parts to the contract. I talked a little bit about payout, but we've got to talk about the other things. How do you find markets? Well, this isn't widely known, but future sales prediction markets are actually really good at identifying risk. For instance, we can go to, I know it's an English site and it's a real nuisance to have an English VPN, but if you can get access to Paddy Power, when people bet money, okay, on a particular outcome, they tend to be experts on that outcome. And if they're willing to bet money on a particular outcome, this betting process of placing money on what future risk is a very accurate prediction. The best research on futures prediction markets indicate that it has a better than 95% accuracy in assessing the risk in the particular market that people are betting on, or they're placing rewards and returns on. So you have to compare that to actuaries inside insurance companies, and they have about an 85% predictive capability. So futures markets done in some sort of a blockchain contract are more accurate than statisticians. Or another way to look at it is the best statisticians are the ones that are placing the bets in those markets, and they're the ones that actually have the knowledge of what's going on, and consequently they get the best results out of this betting process. For instance, right now, there are bets being placed on who the next president is. That's a futures prediction market. And you can actually assess the likelihood of different people winning the race in November. So using smart contracts and futures predictions markets, and there are companies out there doing this right now, is a means by which to take away that chunk of the operation from insurance companies that is finding and accessing markets. It also gives you a good size idea of what the size of one of those markets is, because you can look at how many people are betting on it, and the combination of the two things allows somebody that wants to be in the insurance business to both assess the viability of a particular market and also assess the risk. We talked a little bit about self-managing overhead, but in those cases where you are paying out claims and you want to know if it's a valid claim, having some sort of a smart contract that basically crowdsources the results of a claim would allow you to assess whether or not the claim is real. And if you want to know for fire insurance, did the person's house really burn down? And you have a thing where people can go out and actually say, yes, this house really burned down. Yes, it was or wasn't arson. And they get some sort of reward, means that you could crowdsource the validity of your payouts. And instead of having an insurance adjuster set out to the field, which costs money and is overhead, to determine the validity, you can transfer this responsibility out to a contract and to the public to check the validity. And using some sort of a reputational process in the contract, you can determine whether or not you believe the results of people's responses to the validity of a particular claim. So there's a way to use smart contracts to deal with that piece of it, which leads to the overhead of the payment process itself. And I think it's fairly obvious that in terms of billing, collecting payment, and accumulating this, a blockchain would be just about ideal. I mean, what does it do in Bitcoin? It's the transfer of payments from a source to a destination. And if you set up your insurance so that they pay in something like Ethereum or Bitcoin for their insurance, and the contract itself has a recurring payment model or a periodic payment model, with just a little bit of extra overhead on top of it, you can set up a payment system that handles the payment. And those things like the 11% IT and the 9% operation suddenly disappear. So the combination of these things put together means that blockchain is basically pretty much an existential threat. One of my friends is the head of research for Hanford Insurance. And his particular thing is researching and developing what Hanford looks at as the next generation of insurance products on blockchain. They think that there is somewhere between an 80 and a 95% likelihood that blockchain and blockchain systems based on this kind of stuff is going to completely replace the entire insurance industry with a set of automated solutions. So people in the insurance industry are aware of this. They are researching it and trying to develop it right now. And it represents the biggest threat to what they've been doing for hundreds of years ever. So this is an entire industry, a $1 trillion industry around the world that could be replaced. And made more efficient, made more accurate, made more transparent, and quite likely improved in a lot of different ways.